Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we filled you in on Montpellier, and this week we'll be covering Dallas and Rotterdam. We got Dallas debuting as a 500 and Rotterdam having an absolutely stacked draw. This was definitely an eventful week, and we have a lot to unpack here, so let's just get right into it. Aidan, I feel like you foreshadowed this Alcaraz title when you said last week that you realized Alcaraz hadn't won an indoor hard title yet, which was pretty surprising. I mean, this draw here in Rotterdam was pretty stacked, like I said, especially with indoor hard guys. And did you see him winning this, or like, are you kind of shocked here?
To be honest, I feel like I would have been surprised if anyone else had won it. Like I talked to you during this week about how this year has felt so far, and it feels as though there are only two guys that actually are tough to beat, and that's Alcaraz and Sinner, whereas everyone else just seems very beatable. So if Alcaraz had lost this, it would have actually been a shock rather than it being a shock for him to win it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have been that shocked because he is kind of flaky. Like we do see Alcaraz have spurts of pure bliss, but then also like, for example, US Open, just recent early exits, and especially with this draw, I thought maybe a guy like, I don't know, Herkoch, Rublev, Medvedev, guys that like do well in indoor hard maybe would have had a chance to win.
Yeah, honestly, I think it would be more expected for him to lose to someone like outside of the top 30 or something because it feels as though when he loses, it's because he's going for too much and they're just not working out for him. Like he goes for so many aggressive shots all the time, and some days they're just not going in for him. And when he plays against all these top guys, it feels like he knows he's comfortable playing against them. While they may be better than other guys he plays, he's very comfortable because he knows how they play. But sometimes he plays a guy that's like outside the top 30 and randomly is like, oh, I just can't hit my shots today. And then he gets frustrated.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, going off that, he was spectacular this week as far as an entertainment standpoint. Like he had an around the back shot and then just pulling out crazy stuff that you never would ever like see from Sinner or anyone that's, of that status or that caliber. I feel like he's just more willing to go out and do trick shots.
Yeah. And I saw an article actually that was Djokovic talking about who he thinks is going to carry the baton as like the leader of tennis going forward. And he said Alcaraz, even though Sinner is right now the number one guy in the world, inarguably pretty much, Alcaraz just has that style that elevates him, makes him more popular among people. People enjoy watching him play a little bit more. And so that's why he may be the figurehead of tennis going forward.
Hey, that's a big responsibility, but you know what Billie Jean King says, right?
Dude, what is that?
Pressure is a privilege. Come on,
Oh,
it's on
yes,
the,
of
it's
course.
like
Of
in the
course.
hallway on the way out to Arthur Ashe. So every
Yeah.
player reads that. It's funny. I saw a podcast. I think one of this bodybuilder, Chris Bumstead or something, repurposed that quote as if like he was the one who made it up, and everyone kind of called him out on it.
Yeah. You're like, no, no, you didn't say
Yeah,
that, man.
nice try.
But it,
But
it is a very accurate quote because
mhm.
I feel like my best example of that is like when some guy is in the World Cup final and it's like, oh, these guys don't want to take the penalty kick. It's like it's a privilege to be in that scenario and have the chance to take that penalty kick, right? Like you don't want to
100%.
be like shying away from that moment.
Yeah, so I think Alcaraz will step up. But let's start with Dallas here. So just before we get into the actual meat and potatoes, this is the Dallas Open's first year as an ATP 500. They completely upgraded this tournament. They put a lot of money into it. It is now at the Star, which is the Cowboys practice facility, which is pretty cool. They had some top-notch facilities as far as, gym equipment, recovery stuff, and four practice courts, which apparently is a lot for an ATP 500. Gourmet food, tons of space for the players, and all in all, had great reviews from all the players.
Yeah, I when you see something like this, you got to compare it to a Masters 1000 like Miami, where they're kind of always like, "Oh, this is terrible. The facilities are not set up for us," and they show that here you can do it correctly, even though it is at a football stadium, like in facility as well. Whereas the Miami one, it's just not so great.
Yeah, remember Casper Ruud complaining about it?
Exactly, exactly.
Ah, yeah, no, it is interesting. I feel like I've touched on this before. I think certain tournaments like Miami is strictly, all right, we're looking at the bottom line. Where can we cut costs? How can we make this tournament profitable? Whereas I feel like the Dallas Open, because it's the first year as a 500, they're really trying to make it special for the players, which they appreciate. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, feels bad for Tommy Paul. He won it last year, right? But it was only
Yeah.
a 250 at that point, I think.
Yeah, and actually a ton of the players thought it was really cool that they were playing at the Star because think about it, you have all these foreign players, and I think the NFL team that comes to mind for you is the Dallas Cowboys. It is literally America's football team. Very well known, probably the like best well-known franchise across the world. So having these tennis players play there, they thought it was pretty cool. We had not quite the US Open, but we did see some celebrities there, Gabby Douglas, DeMarcus Ware, Dirk Nowitzki, who is actually a big pickleball guy now. I saw him playing in some celebrity tournaments and whatnot. And then Clay Thompson.
Yeah, so some people like based in that area, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so now let's get into the tournament. We got the round of 32. Biggest upset here in this round was Cam Norrie beating Alex Mickelson. And I'm pretty sure Norrie has been playing challengers recently. He's really been struggling on tour, whereas Mickelson, kind of the opposite. He's rising. He had a pretty good run at the Australian Open. He actually had control of the first two sets. And then he just let the second set slip away in a tiebreaker and completely imploded in the third set, lost 6-1.
Yeah, I think this kind of reflects just maybe a little bit of that maturity aspect that Mickelson as a young player might still be lacking. But I also think it's a little bit of the risk of having a big serving game like Mickelson does. It feels like when you're really dependent on your serve, you may go to a lot of tie breaks, and then you risk, even if you're in control of a match, you lose a tie break because it's such a can go either way type of thing. And all of a sudden you're even in sets, even if you've dominated the match.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of sucks. And then on another note here, Nori went to TCU. He played college tennis there. So I think Texas kind of means a lot for him here. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer that he's going to choose to play in Dallas versus go over to Rotterdam.
Yeah, I mean, cool to see him get the win here, maybe in front of some local fans.
Definitely. And then the top four seeds, Fritz, Ruud, Paul, and Sheldon, they all advance. The tour elders, Manarino and Nishikori, they lost first round. And then Marcos Giron had to pull out because of a neck injury, and he was slated to play Ruud, which would have been unfortunate because I think Giron made it pretty far last year. But we saw a lot of Americans in this tournament, a lot of the top ones too. And Jerome, I think, would have had a pretty good opportunity here.
Yeah, was this a tournament last year? Unless I'm mistaken, wasn't this where Tommy Paul played your own in the final?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so bummer for him.
I know, I know. All right, let's get into the round of 16 here. Biggest shock was Taylor Fritz losing to Denis Shapovalov. Clearly the biggest upset this round. This went to a third set tiebreaker, and this was cold from Shapovalov. So right after the match, on his way up to the net, he was just staring down fans, waving them goodbye. I'm assuming Taylor Fritz fans, but that's just what I love about Shapo. Like he is a fucking killer, and yeah, I just think tough draw for Taylor Fritz all in all because you never know what you're gonna get with Denis Shapovalov. Like he's very talented, but he's also a loose cannon too.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny though because it does kind of foreshadow, like we were talking about earlier with the Alcaraz. It foreshadows how the tournament was going to go because Shapovalov is like, oh, okay, he's playing at a high level. That means that he's a threat to win this thing. It's also a situation where hindsight gives us more of a way to reflect on this match. Where when this happened the first day, you're like, oh my God, Fritz lost to Shapovalov. That's such a bad loss. And then you see how Shapovalov ends up doing in the tournament, and you're like, oh, okay, so he was just on this tournament.
Yeah. I think this one it doesn't hurt as much for Fritz because exactly what you said, but in the moment, I think Fritz was the favorite to win the tournament here. Like despite Tommy Paul winning it last year, Fritz was, I think, the the most hyped up American in
Well,
here. So
100%. I mean, he's top five in the world. He's
yeah,
expected to win it.
yeah.
He's the one seed in the tournament, and the fact that he lost in the second round is pretty disappointing.
So that kind of hurts. And then we have another top American, Ben Shelton. He goes down to Munar. This one was pretty shocking. Paul and Ruud, they advance on, and then we got some drama in the round of 16 as well. This one was funny. Riley Opelka got into it with a fan. He told him to go the fuck inside, and he got a point penalty from the ref for this. And then after, he went out and said that this was the worst ref on tour, that he's trying to get him suspended. Basically saying that there's like no repercussions for refs messing up calls, but players are, they have their financial status, they have like outcomes of matches. So he was pissed. He thinks refs should be penalized for these.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, if he's swearing at a fan, I feel like that's a pretty reasonable motivation for the ref to be like, okay, point penalty, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that like one of the basic rules is don't swear at the fans?
Yeah, I don't think you're allowed to swear at the fans. In Riley's defense, I think the guy was coughing like whenever he was about to serve. So I think Riley, instead of having the ref kind of take control, because that is the ref's main responsibility there. Now with all electric line calling and everything, I feel like the refs don't do anything. So the least they can do is tame the crowd and kind of like flow the match. So the ref didn't do anything about this guy disrupting his serve. So Riley took it into his own hands, told him to get the fuck out or go the fuck inside. And and then the ref gave him the point penalty, and Riley went over and confronted the ref about it. And he said the ref just kind of used his emotion, like didn't seem composed enough to like use his own judgment to make a call. So I don't know. I could see both sides, but I think at the end of the day, yeah, a player's clearly not allowed to swear at a fan.
Yeah, I think what that comes down to is like, can the chair umpire even hear the guy coughing, right?
Yeah,
It's like what,
I
and also
guess.
what can he really do about that? Like he can say please, other than
Please,
that, please be quiet
please,
when they are
everyone.
serving.
Yeah.
But other than
But yeah,
that,
I'm
there's not
sure
much you
he's
can do.
yeah, and I'm sure Riley's gonna get a pretty big fine for that.
I'm sure.
All right, quarterfinals. At this point, out of the 12 Americans, very American heavy tournament, Paul and Opelka are the only ones left here, and of course they have to play each other. Tommy Paul advances. I thought this was a great matchup for Tommy because you have one of the best returners in the game versus a serve bot, and he did a great job of neutralizing the serve +1 that Opelka was giving him. Hit very effective returns, and was also able to hit very precise passing shots too. So it kind of felt like, despite how well Riley was serving, Tommy Paul was still able to get back to neutral in the rallies, and then from that point, he has the advantage, just being a lot more athletic.
Yeah, I think he also used kind of his slice in order to do that. Slice a lot isn't on his backhand, and he was kind of like, yeah, if you want to try to play aggressive ground strokes against me, you can do that. But he knows that's not necessarily Opelka's strength. And
Hmm.
so, as long as he could kind of get it to neutral, like you were saying, he could kind of dominate those ground stroke rallies. It's also interesting. I think this is the first time these two guys have played, and I think they commented on that, which was it was kind of shocking to them because they've played in a lot of tournaments, a lot of similar tournaments over the course of their careers, and it was surprising them. This was the first time they actually matched up.
Yeah, I know they're really good friends too. Like there's some old photos of them like back in juniors when they're 12, 13 years old hanging out. I also know they have the same fitness coach because I follow him on Instagram. And he posts videos of Riley and Tommy Paul working out. But going back to your point about Tommy's slice backhand, I did notice that was very effective on the serve return because he was essentially using the slice, keeping it low, like kind of drawing Riley in and then hitting a passing shot. Like Riley just wasn't able to do enough with the short balls at the net.
Exactly, exactly.
And then next match, Casper Ruud gets pretty lucky with a walkover over Nishioka. He did win the first set, and then the second set was at 3-2. He was up, and Nishioka had to retire. Shapovalov beats Mahach. This one was sad for Mahach because he was up a break in the first set. lost it, and then got bageled the second set. The final score was 7-6, 6-0. And I'm going to start doing this in these episodes, but another broadcaster quote that I heard that I got a pretty good kick out of was a Dallas demolition over here that Shapovalov put on.
Yeah,
Just
got
dude,
the alliteration in there.
they love the alliterations, and you'll see in the next tournament too. I have another one, but let's talk about Mahach here. He had the early break in the first set, and then he lost it. He went up 3-0 in the tiebreak, and then was up 5-3 at some point too. And somehow Shapovalov still snuck away with the set. And it just shows Mahach had so many opportunities that he completely squandered. Clearly lost his focus after that first set, having so many opportunities. And I feel like at that point just wanted the match to be over, loses 6-0.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's very difficult mentally to stay in a match after so many missed chances like that in the first. I think that's just what separates the really, really top guys is that they're like, okay, that set is done. It might as well have been 6-0 in that first set. It doesn't matter how close you were, as soon as the set's over, it's over.
Yeah, and this goes to show Shapovalov kind of like playing on borrowed time. He goes on to win the final after, not saying he would have lost the match, but he easily could have lost the first set, and then you never know what's going to happen from there.
100%. 100%.
And then last quarterfinal match, Munar, he beat Arnaldi in three, followed up his Shelton victory with a victory over Arnaldi. Big sleeper going into the semis. You don't hear a lot about Munar, but he just kind of snuck his way in there
Got
with
it done. Yeah.
yeah, got it
I think it
done.
was one of those times where it was like, yeah, he beat a couple guys that he wasn't expected to. And then you see him in the semis and you're like, how'd this guy get here?
Yeah, right. Well, good segue into the semis. Tommy Paul's defending title run comes to an end against Denis Shapovalov. And this was funny because I was watching the match, and after Dennis went up that first set, I bet on Tommy because the odds were like plus 300. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to come back and win here. Clearly doesn't, but I don't know. Pretty fun to at least root for him there for the comeback. I didn't think Shapovalov would win in two sets.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where when Shapovalov is on, he is on.
He's
And
on.
when he showed that he was playing very well when he beat Taylor Fritz, and now comes into this match and beats Tommy in two, it just shows going into that final, he definitely had a lot of momentum.
For sure. And then the other semifinal match, we had Ruud edging past Munar, and I'll let you take care of this one because I know you
Yeah,
you
this was
particularly like this match, didn't
yeah,
you?
it was my match of the week actually. Very interesting one, momentum wise, because it was all Ruud early, broke Minar's first service game, and then again later to take the set, and it looked pretty one sided through the first set, and then all of a sudden, second set was just cruising along, and then Minar just stepped it up after one random changeover. At 1-2, he takes all the momentum and goes on this run where he wins 16 out of 18 points. And just all of a sudden, he's up 5-2 in the second set and had broken Ruud twice. Like, what just happened? And then there's kind of a closer game to serve out that second set where Menard gets it done, but Ruud has now won a few points. He's kind of stabilized it. All of a sudden, Menard isn't just completely dominating. And then the last set was just crazy. Like the first game came out and there were multiple deuces. Menard had a break point, but Ruud ends up holding on. And every single game after that was pretty close until 4-4. And Menard got the break. So all of a sudden he's serving for the match, and you're like, oh, this is it. It's over. And at 30-30, it looked like he was 2 points away from winning the match, but wasn't able to convert it. Ruud ends up breaking back. And then we go into this tiebreak in the third set, and neither player was able to control their serve at all. Of the first 6 points in the breaker, only one had the server actually hold on to their service point, and it was Ruud, and they ended up getting it done 7-4. So pretty close tiebreaker. Definitely a match that could have gone either way, but in the end, I think Ruud just maybe a little bit of experience in these close matches, but was just able to get it done.
Wow, what a match. Definitely the experience. But credit to Menard because I feel like if you're a player who is particularly good at problem solving, playing Ruud, like, okay, you go out there, he dominates you the first set. you kind of notice how he's playing and you adjust, and then you're able to make that switch. Like for example, Rude loves to hang behind the baseline. He runs around his backhand a lot. Like I feel like if you pick up on those little things, you can make those adjustments. And then I think he did. I think that's clearly what he did there when he came out the second set. And then I think Rude had to readjust, kind of switch up his game. Clearly, what he was doing the first set wasn't working, had to, adjust. So I like these matches where you're seeing problem solving on the fly by both players.
100%. Yeah.
All right, final time. Denis Shapovalov wins the biggest title of his career. He had a great run, three top 10 wins, had to come back a few times, like I mentioned. And then he reminded us about his big lefty serve. Like he's kind of an underrated server because he double faults so much. But when his serve is on, it is on.
100%. I mean, I think that's kind of his entire game, right? It's like
Yeah.
when it's on, it's so dangerous, but when it's off, you're like, this guy could lose to anybody.
Yeah, yeah. He kind of reminds me of Tommy Paul, where they both get that big torso lean there. But anyway, Denis Shapovalov went 5 years being titleist. He won Stockholm back in 2019, and then he won Belgrade back in November 2024, and then this one here. So two titles, pretty close to one another. I feel like we might see a resurgence from him. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I mean, kind of like I've talked about this entire pod, right? I think Shapovalov is a guy where he honestly could play like a top five guy, like one of the best players in the world when he's on. And I think could beat guys like Sinner or Alcaraz if he's playing his best tennis, even if they're also playing great tennis. But the issue is, it's just flashes we see. It's like you see him in this tournament, you're like, oh my God, this guy could be like one of the best in the world. And then he'll go into the next tournament and you'll be like, who is this player? And how is he even qualified for this tournament? Because all of a sudden he just doesn't make shots. He just looks completely unmotivated in the match. And it's just whether or not we can see him consistently stay at this level.
Yeah, I mean, remember, I think he was a teenager when he beat Rafa in Montreal way back when. And then you saw he was being told as, all right, next gen, like this is the next top guy. And then, like you said, he's kind of a mental head case. Like once he figures out that part of his game, I think, yeah, hopefully we can see him compete with guys like Alcaraz and Sinner because he is on the talent level, but he's not quite there mentally.
100%. 100%. And the excitement aspect is big too. Like he could be like we were talking about with Alcaraz, he could be one of the guys that's like a leader of the sport because people love watching him play when he's on. And he also has kind of that maybe a bad boy personality, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this guy's entertaining to watch, dude.
Exactly.
He,
So if he can harness his ability like we maybe hope that he can, he could be a really top guy, but it's just whether or not he can lock down that mentality.
yeah, I agree. He's got the shot making, couple that with his personality. Like he's very vocal. He celebrates a lot. He also apologizes, which sometimes too much, but he congratulates players when they hit nice shots. Like he's just someone that um, I think is good for the sport, like when he's doing well. And just kind of going back to the problem solving aspect, he really took advantage of Rude's depth here. He was playing aggressively, he came to the net a lot. I think that style mixed with his personality, hopefully, this title is just kind of a catalyst for the rest of his career and he can keep making incremental moves.
100%. But speaking of Rude, and you're talking about his playing style, how do you think he did in this tournament?
I thought he did pretty well. I mean, it's an indoor hard tournament, so I feel like him making a final was already pretty impressive. Like if I'm Rude, I'm leaving with my head held high. I think this is a success for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't want to underrate his indoor hard ability because think about the ATP finals last year. Like he beat Alcaraz at the ATP finals, so that's clearly a massive win there. But I kind of agree. I usually don't think that anything other than a title for a top guy in a tournament like this is really a success.
Hmm.
But I do think Ruud is in a kind of different situation just because the expectations weren't for him to actually do this well. To be honest, going into this tournament, I expected him to lose probably around where Tsitsipas lost, right? Like
Yeah.
third round, second round. But the fact that he made it to the final and kind of actually backed up what he was expected to do was a success to me, because I wasn't expecting him to do the to back up his seeding, let's say.
Right. Definitely the right move for him to go over and play in Dallas versus Rotterdam with, all the other top players
Yeah.
or other
It's still a
stars.
bummer though for him, because he's only won like 50% of his tour finals now. Like
Yeah.
he's won 12 career titles and he's made 24. So
Wow.
I feel like you kind of hope for a top guy to be able to have a higher, I guess, conversion rate than that. I mean, you look at Alcaraz and Sinner right now at the highest
Mhm.
level, they're 100% in their Grand Slam finals.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think someone even asked him about, his success here in an indoor hardcourt and then said how good he was on clay. And he countered that with saying, it's not that I'm really good on clay. I just play so much more on clay, so I get more victories on clay. Like it's just a product of me playing more on clay. Like he plays almost every single clay tournament.
Yeah, but his performances are also better on clay. Like there's no
Maybe
argument
because
about
he
that.
plays more on it though.
But I mean, that doesn't mean his performances aren't better.
Well, his performance is just wins, right?
Well, what I'm saying is this is like I think he wins a higher percentage of his
Oh,
matches on
okay.
clay.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yes.
just saying he has more
Yeah,
wins,
yeah, yeah. Right.
but
Right.
like he's made two French Open finals, and
Hmm.
last 3 years he's lost in like the first round of Wimbledon twice, and has made maybe like the round of 16 since 2022. What has he done in the U.S. Open?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good
Whereas,
point.
like I was saying, 3 of the last 4 years, I think he made it's semifinal, final, final, or whatever in the French Open. So
Yeah. And then just won his first ATP 500 too.
exactly, Barcelona. So another
Hmm.
clay.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up Dallas and get into Rotterdam right now. So, first round, round of 32, all the top seeds advance. We got the top eight: Alcaraz, Medvedev, Deminar, Rublev, Runa, Tsitsipas, Fils, and Hurkacz. They all get through. My bet of the week got canceled this round because GMP pulled out due to an illness. Your bet of
Bummer.
the week, on
Yeah,
the other
bummer on
hand,
that
hit.
one, because I do think GMP would have gotten it done over. It was over Kovacevic, right?
Yeah, and it also would have been interesting seeing him in this stacked draw too, like where he would fare with all these top players.
100%.
Man, but yeah, Morojan, he got it done, so that was good.
Hundred
Good for
percent.
you there.
It's just you just got to look for Morojan in every draw and be like, that's my bet of the week. They always underrate him.
Yes, yes. All right, round of 16. This was unfortunate. FAA, he split sets with Vavasori and then he had to retire. Said he had a problem with the right toe that actually came up during practice the day before. Like I said, very unfortunate because he's coming off a nice win in Montpellier. And this is the indoor hard swing, which I think he plays his best tennis on. So this is like his chance to really stack up points early in the year.
100%. Yeah, definitely a bummer. And I also just don't want to see him kind of falling back into that injury hole we saw kind of last year, where he's pulling out a lot, just because he has so many points he needs to defend to stay anywhere near the top. And it's just going to be a bummer if he has to pull out. Like if he can't play at all in somewhere like Madrid, all of a sudden he drops just off the map.
Oh, geez. Yeah. And you've had a toe injury too. Those things, it's kind of like they linger on, It's not, it's your toe. You could still play, but it's not going to heal. It's not going to get better when you're still using it.
Exactly. It's one of those things where it's like it's painful and you can't push off your foot. Like all of your things, like when you push off of your foot, it goes off of your toe 90% of your time, especially if it's like your big toe.
Hmm.
That's just the worst. And it's one of those ones where it's really tough to let it heal, because either you have like a full boot on it or you're walking around on it all day, and maybe it's healing slowly, but you can't really avoid using it because it's just your foot.
Yeah. So is yours healed?
Mine is healed, but actually recently it's been coming
Oh,
back a
geez.
little bit, to be honest,
Probably
which is
stiff
not
as a
not
board.
great. Yeah, not a fun injury.
Yeah, no. Well, biggest shock of this round was Medvedev losing to Belucci. I have a feeling we're going to start hearing the name Belucci a lot because he made a nice run in this tournament. He has such a disrupting play style. He hits some underarm serves. He sliced a lot. He hit drop shots, and he's a lefty, which a lot of players aren't used to. So the ball's coming in at a different angle. This got Medvedev totally out of rhythm. I feel like he was so frustrated out there. He just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Belucci has been around for a while though, so I don't know if it'll be a consistent sort of him being higher level, but either way, I do think this is just not great for Medvedev. Terrible start for the year for him. He's what 1-2. Uh, just not what we want to see from him. And I think he's actually playing in Marseille this week to try and break his slump. But he's at the point where there are actually rumors of him retiring, and he commented on this and gave comments, I guess, that just weren't a great sign, in my opinion, because he said essentially that like as long as he keeps making good money, he's going to keep playing. So he's like, as long as I'm playing in these top tournaments and getting paid just exorbitant amounts of money to maybe win a round or two, I'm going to keep playing. But if he falls off, and he said if he drops out of the top 100, he's kind of inclined to retire because he's like, I'm not gonna go back to grinding out on like the Challenger Tour just to like make a living because he's already made so much money playing at the highest level.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he's the guy I at least saw him in the top 100 for the next like 5 to 7 years, right? It's crazy
100%,
that
yeah.
they're already talking about retirement.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those guys where he's like pragmatic about it, where he's like,
Mhm.
it's still pretty fun to go out there and play tennis and get paid a bunch of money to do it. So as long as he keeps being able to compete as like at the highest level with the best guys, even if he's losing more than and what isn't playing like a guy that's maybe competing for slams, he's still
Mhm.
going to keep playing just because he's like, why would I retire?
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like when you're doing that, the motivation just isn't quite there. It's not the same. And I feel like we're starting to see that with Tsitsipas too. Like we're starting to see him be more complacent, I think. He's like, "Hey, I'm having a great time. I'm playing tennis. This new generation's good. There's really not much I can do." I feel like we're starting to see that in Medvedev, and I like you said, I guess he's not going to grind out challengers, but it would be a little funny to see Medvedev, play a couple of challengers, get his confidence back up, and then
Well, I
get
think that's
back
what
on
he's
the
trying to do
tour.
this week in Marseille. Even though it's a
Yeah.
250, it's still like not necessarily a tournament he would play in all the time, but he really is
Hmm.
just trying to be like, let me get some wins.
Yeah. Stack them up. Little wins, man. All right. Runa and Feast, they go down. Runa lost to Martinez and Feast lost to Altmaier.
Yeah, I think here Martinez just is a guy that seems very underrated. Like I think he's almost in the top 40 and has been like last year, but I've almost never really heard of him. So good win for him, but I just think we got to kind of watch out for him because I haven't heard about him at all.
Yeah. I'm assuming he's a clay guy because he's from Spain. I don't know though.
Yeah, no, I mean it's like when you see Serendolo or someone like that, and you're like, okay, this guy probably just dominates in the clay courts, and then he's ranked highly, but you never know. He gets a win here over Runa.
Yeah, I think we got Rio coming up for the South American swing, so we're gonna see a lot of the clay guys pretty early on.
Yeah, trying to collect their points. Baez, I
Yeah.
know, has a lot of points to defend down there.
Oh wow. Yeah, I heard this was I think the first year Alcaraz played in Rotterdam versus going down to South America to play.
Is he going down there now, or is he
No,
just
I don't think he is.
skipping out?
I think he's skipping out.
Bold.
But yeah, let's get into the quarterfinals. Talking about Belucci, he beat Tsitsipas in 2 sets. This was a great match. I caught the highlights. A lot of great points. Very entertaining. Belucci had a great matchup because he's a lefty, so he had his forehand just kind of hammering Tsitsipas's backhand. Would get into those long rallies, and eventually Tsitsipas would make an error. Here's the other alliteration broadcast quote I got for you. Belucci blasts his way into the semifinals.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, and it's accurate. He just beat down the backhand.
Yeah, he did. There you go. You're getting there.
um, but yeah, I feel like kind of what you were just saying, weighing the Tsitsipas Medvedev names at this point, you see them lose in a draw. Doesn't carry as much weight as when they were top five in the world. Not quite as much. It's still a big
Yeah,
win for Belucci, but not quite the same. They're not playing at that peak level.
right, definitely. And then we got Alcaraz. He just took care of business against Martinez, 6-2, 6-1. Ah, man, I feel like this was the match where he had the around the back too. I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him just clobber the guy after kind of struggling with Van de
Yeah.
Zandschulp. Maybe he was just like, okay, I do sometimes struggle with Bodic, but I'm gonna handle my business in this one.
Yeah, I wonder what it is. But anyway, we had Deminar also taking care of business against Altmaier 6-1, 6-4. Hurkacz and Rublev. This was the only top eight seeded match in the quarters or matchup in the quarters. The rest were a seeded guy versus a non-seeded guy. Hurkacz ended up getting the best of Rublev here. Three sets. Thought he did a great job of striking from the baseline because we all know Rublev likes to hang out and just rip shots from the baseline. So Hurkacz was hanging in with him there, but then he was also showing off his hand skills at the net. So all in all, pretty good match.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. I think high quality, really, and not a terrible loss from Rublev. Like he's had a lot of terrible losses, but this is one where you got to be like, okay, it was Hurkacz. He's a high quality player. The loss doesn't feel as bad.
definitely. All right, semifinals. Alcaraz got pushed to three sets. There was a tense second set tiebreaker that, Alcaraz should have closed out, but he didn't. But he does close the door in the third. This was the only three setter other than Bodek, I think, in the tournament here for Alcaraz. But great to see Hurkacz back to performing. Had a great run, semifinal. I think the tour is in better hands when Hurkacz is doing well. He's one of those players.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this hopefully means like he's back fully from that injury he had last year, and we'll see him making more runs now.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully. And then Deminar put Belucci in his place, 6-1, 6-2. I feel like here you just can't out athlete the demon. Like he's everywhere on the court. All those drop shots and disrupting play style that Belucci was trying to implement wasn't working because like for example, you drop shot Deminar, he's getting there. And not only is he getting there, but he's getting there with ease and he's hitting a nice quality shot there too. So I think Belucci had a good run semifinals, but he's gonna have to figure out, a more conducive playing style to beat guys like Deminar and, for example, Tommy Paul, guys that are also athletic enough to just kind of hang in there with them.
100%. And I think just the big thing to me is that Belucci wasn't intimidated by his opponents in this match or in these matchups rather, because yes, it's very easy to go into a match against Medvedev or Tsitsipas and be like, damn, this guy has played in Grand Slam finals and has played in the biggest stage, and I've never played in any match close to that big, and just let that kind of be in your head while you're playing them. But he just went in there and was like, no, this is just any other opponent, and beat two guys where, yes, they aren't playing at their peak level, but they do have kind of a reputation of being a elite level player, and he didn't let that get in his head.
Yep, one of those situations where all the pressure here is on Medvedev and Tsitsipas. Belucci has nothing to lose. He goes out there, he loses the match. Hey, he's supposed to lose. He's, technically the worst player, but yeah, like you said, didn't get intimidated and really brought it to him. So, I mean, he's also got swag out there too. He's got that long hair and he wears a bandana, not like a Roger Federer Nike headband, but like an actual bandana. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
swaggy look.
swaggy, something like a Agassi back in the day.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. Drum roll, please. We got the finals. Alcaraz, he won his first indoor hard tournament against Deminar. He brings their head-to-head record 3-0. This I noticed. I feel like Deminar just can't notch a victory against Sinner or Alcaraz here. He's like combined 0-11, I think, 0-12.
Tough.
Yeah, that just kind of goes to show the separation. We've talked about it before. Um,
Yeah. And it's just one of those matchup ones. It's like Monfils being what 0-17 against
yeah.
Djokovic. It's like there are just some guys where your style of play just does not fit against these guys. And it's like Deminar, he can hassle guys, but Alcaraz and Sinner are like, yeah, I'll just keep making you run back and forth across the court until you miss one.
Yeah. Speaking of running across the court, man, these rallies, there were some long, long busters here. There was a ton of athletic slides from both players. Cat and mouse points up in the net where you have like a player drop shotting someone and then they run up and hit a crazy angle, you think that's a winner, and then the other player somehow gets it, and then the other player lobs over them, and it's just like a lot of fun points where you're kind of holding your breath while they're up there at the net.
100%. But I feel like cat and mouse describes the situation perfectly, though, because you see Deminar play the mouse all the time in these matches, and he gets around the court, and people are like, oh, why
Hmm.
won't this guy go away? And the
Yeah.
normal, like, quote unquote, cat that he's going against, he can sneak out a win against them because they're like, I just can't get it past this guy. But then playing against Alcaraz or Sinner, it's like a mouse versus a panther. It's like he has just no chance. As much as he can run away, they're just eventually just going to catch him and destroy him.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Deminar here, but I was pleasantly surprised that he actually forced this matchup to a or this match to a third set.
Yeah, it's
Like,
just.
is that bad that I'm giving him credit for going 3 sets with Alcaraz?
I mean,
Like,
Alcaraz, like I said, probably the second best player in the world. No disrespect to Zverev, but I do think Alcaraz is just a top level player on it when he's playing well. And I think, yeah, it's a good job for Deminar to force a third. I don't think people even expected him to take a set.
yeah, yeah. Well, that about wraps up Rotterdam and Dallas. A few miscellaneous things I wanted to cover before hopping into segments. So, I don't know if you noticed the camera angle for Dallas, but I hated it. I thought it was way too high up. Did
I
you
think
did you
it's
see it?
I think it's one of those things where it's just the setup of the tournament in terms of like it being at the start. There's all these positives, but it isn't
Hmm.
necessarily set up for like camera angles, stuff like that. So it's kind of a give and take.
Yeah, I felt like I was watching tennis from the freaking nosebleeds.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It kind of ruined watching tennis for me there, but I got used to it as the tournament went on. Like the first day I watched, I was like, whoa, 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 what is going on here? And then the other thing I wanted to cover, I don't know if you saw, but Alcaraz and Ruud were both rocking the nose strips this week.
Yeah, I gotta open up the airways.
Yeah, well, I know I heard Alcaraz was battling a cold. I don't know, Ruud, if that's going to be an every tournament thing now or what.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense if they're feeling sick like that. And I do on kind of understand when you actually think about it, like all these times players are like, oh, this guy was feeling sick in this tournament. And you're like, oh, there's no way. He just was playing bad. And then you're like, but I guess if you think about it, these guys are traveling around constantly, always in new environments, always in airports, all these things, right? It's like it's gonna wear on the immune system.
Oh, for sure. And then not to mention sleep schedules, just like hopping
Exactly. Yeah.
time zones too. That can't be great. But back to the nose strip thing, this is pretty funny. So my girlfriend actually makes fun of me a lot for having very small nostrils. And as you know, I'm Scandinavian. My dad's Norwegian, just like Casper Ruud. And apparently it's an adaptive feature
So
because
cold.
yeah, it like keeps heat inside inside longer. Whereas like she's Brazilian, so she has, pretty big nostrils. So I think it might be one of those things where Ruud just has, naturally small nostrils and needs to open them up to breathe better.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I am not an expert on nostril sizes.
Oh, all right.
Uh,
Let's get into segments here. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What did you see this week?
I saw something pretty exciting. I saw the ATP announced live electronic line calling for clay. They put out a great promotion video on X. It was kind of like a 2 to 3 minute clip, kind of explaining how the mark on clay gets distorted when there's different conditions, like how wet or how dry the court is, or how much or how little clay is on the court. And I thought it was interesting because they would put a mark on. They would like have a gun basically, or like a ball machine gun, and purposely hit close marks, and they would ask you like, is this in or out? Like, oh, it looks out because there's no mark on the line. And then from video review they show the ball like skimming the line. So I have mixed feelings about this personally because obviously I want it to be the most accurate for the player's sake, but there was something about the umpire coming off the chair, walking over to the mark, like bending over and then making the call, and then watching the players and the crowd just kind of like waiting for like, what's this guy gonna say? There's just something wholesome about it, and this brings me back to baseball. It reminds me of Major League Baseball. Like you have America's pastime, a classic sport, something with human air, like the umpire making strikes and balls call, where sometimes it's a little subjective, but now they're trying to turn that into electric strike calling, and they're trying to do that here too with tennis, which is also one of the world's oldest sport. And I think at least with the clay, it's kind of part of the game to have that human air. So I don't know. I'm mixed feelings. I'm fine either way, but I did like the whole like umpire coming off and checking the mark.
Yeah, I
It's
did
like
add
a, it's like a
level
coin
like,
flip.
yeah, you have a little bit of anticipation when he comes down there. You're like, oh my god, what's the call he's going to
Yeah.
make? But I gotta say, I'm all for it, to be
Yeah.
honest, because it's just one of those things where it is definite, right?
Hmm.
And you just want to make it not as fair as possible for the players. So to me, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, the biggest point that comes to mind here was what was it, Monte Carlo Sinner Tsitsipas? I truly think Tsitsipas does not win that match and doesn't go on to win the final, obviously, if the umpire gets the right call against Sinner. Do you remember
Yeah.
what I'm talking about
Yeah, I remember it
on
was
that
like
serve?
4-4 in the second set or something
Crazy.
like that.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, what did you see this week?
I saw an update on the Djokovic Murray coaching news, like we
Oh,
talked about a couple weeks ago. They were like, okay, we're going to take some time to decide what's going to happen. And turns out they're actually going to stay together, at least until Wimbledon, is what I saw at least. So hopefully we'll just get some interesting interactions between these two guys in that time. Maybe a little bit of yelling from the box, but
yeah,
I kind of want to see something interesting happen. But
yeah.
either way, I want to see also what Djokovic is able to do. He's playing in Doha coming
Mm.
up, so hasn't played in that many 250s in recent years, but he's looking for that hundredth career title. So
Well,
would be a cool accomplishment if he's able to do it.
oh yeah, and I wonder if he's all healed up already, because that was
I think they did say he's at like 100% now.
wow, dude. I got to get on whatever diet or like stem cell therapy, some whatever he's on. Torn
Well,
meniscus. 3 weeks later, Wimbledon final.
you can look it up, dude. It's pretty aggressive the way he treats his body. Like it's a full on like I remember watching something like that. And it's like, oh, I wake up and I stretch and I drink my celery juice and then I don't eat anything until 3:30. And when I get there, it's like a salad and like rutabaga or some
Mhm.
random vegetable. And then he's like, oh, and then I eat raw potato or something. I don't know. I'm just making this
Yeah,
up,
and then he
but
meditates for an hour and a
yeah,
half.
6 hours of meditation. It's like all these things, and it's yeah, he's pretty full on with keeping the body locked in.
Yeah, pretty safe to say his body is a temple.
100%. How about bet of the week? What'd you go for here?
Bet of the week, I'm going with Opelka minus 185 over Eubanks. Really not much to say here. I just feel like Opelka's at a different stage in his career than Eubanks. I think he's kind of on the rise, whereas Eubanks is a little more on his way out. I think Opelka does have the hot hand right now. He's made some pretty good runs, had some good victories. Eubanks, on the other hand, not so much. Plus, Riley's got a 2-0 record head to head against him, so I feel like it's one of the matchup plays here that favors him. Even though they have similar playing styles, essentially kind of serve bots, right?
Yeah, no, I actually was looking at this bet because I was like, is Eubanks a good value play here? And I was really like, it doesn't feel like it because it just seems as though if Opelka's playing well, he is just Eubanks, but a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, a little bit of recency bias. Remember, Opelka did beat Djokovic. I feel like it just
Yeah, that's in the back of our heads.
it is. But yeah, what about you? Who did you go with this week?
I'm going back to Old Faithful from a couple of weeks ago. I'm going Gasquet plus
Oh,
135 over Bublik. Kind of similar to my bet, like I was talking about from a couple of weeks ago. Gasquet really end of his career, and it's a tournament in France. I think the
hmm
crowd's going to be all for him, and I think he's just going to go all out. And when you look over across the net at Bublik, he's just not been playing great. He's actually 3-12 over his last 15 matches. So
Jeez.
not great trend here. He is a lot younger. That's going to play in his favor, but I'm going to go with Gasquet here just because the Frenchman in France. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I do like whenever I see positive odds against Bublik because he is kind of one of those like loose cannon guys like Shapovalov or even Rublev now, like where you're like, all right, this is a good player, but I do like the odds here. You know, like they could easily lose. So I
Exactly.
think that's a good bet.
Exactly. And then how about match of the week for you? We already kind of covered mine, Ruud and Minar.
Hmm.
So what'd you go for?
Yeah, I went with a kind of a dark horse matchup here that wasn't mentioned earlier. It's Berrettini and Griekspoor. I chose it because of how tight the match was. It was actually, you know, 3 sets, 2 tiebreaks. Griekspoor ended up winning, which, you know, I'm a Berrettini fan, so that was unfortunate. But Griekspoor took control of the first set 6-3. Berrettini battled back, took the second set in a tiebreaker, forced the third set. Third set was tough as nails. These guys were like going back and forth. It ended up going to a breaker. Unfortunately, Greek Sport came out on top, but you know, I think even though Greek Sport couldn't break serve in the last 2 sets, he did a great job of holding his own serve and coming up clutch when he needed to in the breaker. You know,
Yeah.
it's something we mentioned with Monfils, right? What do you do? What's the best way to combat a big server? Hold your own serve, and then when you get to the tiebreaker,
Yeah.
come up with a mini break.
Yeah. Come up with a big shot when they're
Mhm.
serving. Just 100%. Oh, that's kind of what I was gonna say about this. Like when you're going against the big server, it's like sometimes you just got to know that my service games are the ones that have to win, not theirs.
Yeah, funny story about Berrettini. So the guys on Nothing Major, Sam Querrey, Steve Johnson, Isner, Sock, they did him so dirty. They were like, for some reason, talking about the hottest guys on the ATP tour. And so, yeah, I know they're like doing a full draw and everything. It's gonna be crazy. But someone's like, "Oh, Berrettini, we gotta throw Berrettini in there." And I think Steve Johnson's like, yeah, but his legs are just so bad. So like maybe Berrettini with pants. They they're like he's so good up top, but then like you look at his legs, he's got chicken legs.
I'm going Dimitrov, win
You're
it
going,
all.
yeah, he was up there. He was
Yeah,
up
he's got to
there.
be a high seed in
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah. And
But
then Tommy Paul.
yeah, Greek sport kind of the bane of your existence here.
Dude,
Beat
right?
Bodick a couple weeks ago, and then he beats Berrettini.
Right? I know. Maybe I should kind of hop on his bandwagon.
100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.